Welcome to Project You. This podcast explores how integrating changes into your day can produce the best in health, longevity, and performance. We've recruited experts from around the globe who unleash their wisdom to transform your world. Project You dives into how to live a fully optimized life and uncovers tools and techniques to unleash your maximum potential. You only get one shot at this life, so let's get started.
Welcome, episode 25 of the Project You podcast. I've been gone a little while. I've been busy doing some projects. I'm very excited about sharing that with you in just a moment. And I'm very happy to announce that we are approaching the 3,000 student mark in the men's health course. And it's become quite apparent that many of you are interested in more personalized interaction, more feedback, more advice. Obviously, this is an educational course. I can't give you specific doctor advice, but I have taken that to light, and my team and I are recrafting and recreating some of the content and making it much more interactive. And we'll be launching the men's health course a little bit later this fall with Q&A sessions, webinars, and a whole host of interactive sessions to really dive into the heart of the issues that many of you have in terms of health, longevity, and performance. And so I want to thank you in advance if you're part of that. I'll be announcing some details in the next few episodes. Also, the 7-Day Refuel Project, I found out a few weeks ago that the videos were not included in the initial round of PDFs and emails that went out, and so I definitely apologize for that. It was an oversight, technical oversight on our part, but they are there now, and so if you're interested in getting those, you can certainly just look at your email, and they should show up within the next week. For those of you that are on the main Mitchell MD newsletter, I kept the the 7-Day Refuel separate from that because I realized that not everybody's interested in mindfulness and simple morning rituals and strategies that can really ramp up your productivity, health, success. And so I wanted to make that an optional thing. But if you're interested at all about really hacking your life, essentially, this is biohacking, mind hacking, productivity hacking. These are very short, simple, actionable emails and videos, like less than 2-3 minutes or so, that you can apply. Just walks you through 7 days of simple actions that you can take each day to really get your life shifted into a different direction and work towards living an optimized life. And so I'll leave it at that. If you want to jump on the 7-Day Refuel, I'd be more than happy to share that with you. And so let's dive into today's episode. And so part of this episode is mostly about the power of a simple concept. And what I wanted to share with you today as we launch into summer, and I really hope that you're pushing towards your goals, is that I like to review my monthly, weekly goals on a ongoing basis. And at least once a month, I like to review my yearly goals. It only takes a few minutes, and it really helps to keep me grounded. But that's not what this episode's about. As I was thinking about what I wanted to share in this episode, an old summer memory popped into my head, and I thought this is definitely worth sharing, as the chill factor was at a peak. I had goosebumps as I sort of thought of this childhood memory, and I felt very, very apropos to share. And so thoughts are very powerful, and they shape a person's approach to all things in life. It's said that it's not an actual event, but rather one's interpretation and perception of the event that shapes everything. And so could a thought or a single memory save your life? Growing up, I watched all the James Bond movies. I was just totally enthralled with James Bond as a character, as a persona, and I began to build my life around that goal. Not that I wanted to be in the Secret Service, but I had plans of military career. My entire family and now my wife and her family, they're all military background, and I wanted to be a pilot or special forces or some combination of both. And I wanted to have the bevy of impressive skills and talents that those soldiers, those military personnel possessed. And so I did what seemed logical to me at the time. I learned to fly. I got my pilot's license. I began advanced aviation training. I diligently worked to earn 2 black belts. I dived into life-saving skills as a emergency medicine tech. I worked on an ambulance. And really diving into the water seemed to be all that remained. And so I did just that. I mean, I love to swim. I grew up on the lake, skiing, windsurfing, swimming, all that. But going underneath the surface of the water is a completely different realm. It's the vast majority of our planet's underwater, and very few have actually explored its depths. And so I wanted to do just that. And so went through and got PADI certified and dove in tropical locations and just really loved it. And so one afternoon, my close friend Steve and I suited up, threw on our tanks, and headed out into the deep. We let the bravado of youth cloud our judgment. And so we had his dad, Dr. Ken, drive us out to the site, the dive site. We knew it was the deepest part of the lake, freshwater lake. We flipped over the side, smiled, gave a thumbs up, and rapidly descended to 120 feet into the murk. It was cold. It was dark. It was a freshwater lake. We lost visibility around 40 feet. Fortunately, we had some lights that could show us a little bit about what was going on at the bottom, but there was a fair amount of sediment, and just seeing a few feet in front of our faces was about the best we could do. We got to the bottom, signaled okay, and kind of swam around briefly, surveyed the area, and realized that it was cold. There were some dead trees down there. It was pretty spooky, and it was time to ascend. Let's finish the dive. That's when it all went wrong. My friend Steve's regulator started to free flow, which was just basically the air was streaming out of the mouthpiece as fast as possible, emptying his tank. And as I started to ascend, my buoyancy compensation device, the BCD, malfunctioned. And so we sort of kicked, we're young, healthy, athletic guys. We can ascend. This is no problem. And so we started to ascend, and literally the next thing I felt was the bottom hitting my fins. We had ascended 15 feet and sunk, looking at the depth gauge. And it took a little while to figure out what was going on, and the depth, the compression had squeezed the buoyancy out of our wetsuits. Not a big deal. Let's go ahead and ascend, and let's get out of here. And so as we ascended the second time, we ended up ascending too fast, and it blew out my eardrum and caused vertigo. I didn't know which way was up or down, and fortunately, we both sunk back to the bottom. And when we landed, we were just a few feet from each other, and I shined my light on him and he on me, and blood coming out of my nose and my mouth, and it was just a horrible experience. I couldn't tell which way was up or down, just with the vertigo. It was very intense, and to me, it sounded like he was screaming. The air was blowing out of his regulator at a high speed, and we both signaled, let's ascend, and we grabbed each other's forearms and went ahead and started to ascend, and everything seemed to be fine. We got up to the point where we started to get some daylight, around 40 feet again, so I knew we were getting close to our destination, the surface, and everything went black again. I wasn't sure if I passed out or hypoxia or what happened, but again, that all too familiar feeling of the silt around my knees as we had sunk nearly to our waist into the silt at the bottom. Everything was black again. We were holding arms. He was screaming as his regulator free flowed, and I still had vertigo. It was horrific. And at that point, I was sure we were going to die. And my heart was hammering in my head, gasping for breath. Bubbles were streaming from my regulator. And I just took a moment and paused to reflect on the outcome if I let the panic rule the moment. What a tragedy, as my friend's dad is at the surface waiting for us to ascend. And I pictured my family's own grief if we were to drown that afternoon at the bottom. What a horrible feeling. And what popped into my mind was Grandmaster Yun. And part of my martial arts training occurred under the watchful eye of an aged, wise Korean grandmaster. And I recall he had related a story of deep meditation and how playing dead saved his life. And his unit was ambushed during the war, and everyone was killed except for him. He was the only survivor. And what he did was to meditate, to slow his breathing down, and pull the body of a fallen comrade on top of himself as the enemy walked through the area looking for survivors, and proceeded to bayonet anybody who showed any signs of life. And so Grandmaster Yun laid there underneath the body of his friend, meditating, breathing deep, slowing his breathing, slowing his heart rate, and not demonstrating any sign of life as they prodded and kicked the wounded and the dead to determine who needed to be bayoneted. And so I thought of that. I don't know why it popped into my mind at the time, but it did. And so I began to focus my own breathing and just pictured myself standing in front of him as I did during my black belt test a few years prior to that. He was calm, but he was a very intimidating figure. Just a short-statured Korean guy with just intense focus, an intense stare, and just a demeanor around him that just commanded respect. I'd seen this Grandmaster break stacks of bricks with his head in the past at the age of 70. And I recall that after missing a break during my black belt test, he admonished me that speed is not always the solution. To control your breath is to control your life, he reminded me. And so I began to slow my effort, push the panic down into the muck below my fins, and I closed my eyes. Even though it was already dark and I couldn't see anything, inhale for 4 seconds, pause for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, pause, repeat. Everything became clear. My heart rate slowed, my mind cleared, the panic slid away. My friend Steve and I, we calmly ascended, hit several thermoclines, and began to see the light again around 40 feet. "Hey guys, how was it down there?" Steve's dad excitedly shouted. What I want to leave you with is this. Your thoughts are a powerful force in your life. Don't underestimate what you can accomplish by the simple act of thinking it to be so.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Project U. Head over to iTunes and leave a review, or join the conversation on the blog at mitchellmd.com. Have a great week.
Thank you so much for listening to episode 25 of the Project U podcast. I apologize, I'm not in my normal environment. I'm sitting in an old study with a lot of old books, and if you hear that relentless tick, tick, tick in the back, it is a German clock, literally 100 years old, and so I'm going to try and edit the sound out, but I really wanted to share this with you as just seemed a powerful message and memory from my past that surfaced recently, and I knew if I didn't share it, I wouldn't get it out there in time for you to enjoy. So I'm going to be shifting things up here as we roll out a little bit different format for the podcast. We've got some different topics and some different things I want to cover, and I hope you're having a fantastic summer. As always, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can post those on iTunes or SoundCloud or Stitcher. And as always, I'm here for you. You can reach out to me at mitchell@mitchellmd.com, and I'll get back to you. Find me on Twitter at Dr. MitchellMD. And for those of you following me on Instagram, as I roll out the final few recipes in the plant-based, plant-powered, plant-pushing project that I'm working on, I thank you for your comments, and I look forward to sharing more with you in the coming weeks as I wrap up that project as well. Talk to you soon.